Good evening and welcome to The Right Side. I'm your host, Chris Pareja, and this is the show where we talk about today's news, views, and trends from an admittedly conservative perspective. Tonight we're going to take a little bit of an educational approach in two ways. I'm joined this evening by Walter Hoye. He is a pro-life advocate known nationally, but we're going to talk about two things: an upcoming initiative that's going to be placed on the ballot, but more importantly, I've realized that the audience may not know how the initiative process works. So we're going to talk about how it's done, and then we'll talk a little bit about the initiative that Walter is proposing for an upcoming ballot measure. So Walter, thanks for joining us this evening.
I'm happy to be here.
So tell us a little bit about your background, because it's a very interesting one, and about how, at a high level, you got involved in the life movement, and some of, potentially, if you want to, some of the personal costs that it's that have been inflicted upon you because of your choice to go that direction.
Essentially, I got involved, early on in the pro-life movement, standing on a sidewalk in front of an abortion clinic in Oakland. I was holding up a sign that said, "God loves you, and your baby, let us help you." Ultimately, that was a problem. A law was created to make sure that I could not do that. It ended up costing me some time in jail. We had a trial, jury trial. After getting out of jail, we took it to the Ninth Circuit, and the Ninth Circuit actually agreed with me on this, so it's been really an exciting ride.
So what were you charged with to send you to jail?
There's a new law in Oakland. It's called prohibitive harassment, and what they've done, Chris, is literally redefine harassment to mean this: holding a sign, passing out literature, and having a conversation.
I can see how that would be offensive.
No, it absolutely was. Obviously, on a public sidewalk, holding up a sign that says, "God loves you and your baby, let us help you," It isn't a problem.
Yeah, it's too bad that they didn't name it the Hoye Law, as I joked with you earlier. I mean, at least you get the credit, because if they're writing a law to stop one man, they should put your name on it.
Yeah, maybe I'll suggest that.
Yeah. Well, you are such a threatening individual anyway, so.
Wow.
So talk to me a little bit about, you've got an initiative that you're going to be working on. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about how the process works. Is it difficult? Is it easy to get something on the state ballot? And why are you going about it in that way?
Well, California is such a wonderful state. We have the privilege of gathering signatures and placing something on the ballot. We're a ballot initiative state. The process works this way. You apply for title and summary from the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State gives you title and summary. The Secretary assesses the budget ramifications of it and how it will impact the state. Once you receive title and summary, at that point you can print up your petitions, and then you can start gathering signatures. And for this particular cycle, we're going to have to gather 807,415 signatures to actually place it on the ballot.
Right.
In California, once we get title and summary, we have about 150 days to get the job done. If we do that, it goes directly on the ballot. There's no question about that, and voters get a chance to chime in that way.
Right. And so talk to me about where the 800,000 signature number comes from. It's usually a percentage, correct?
You're absolutely correct. It's a percentage of the last government gubernatorial election.
Okay.
So based upon the number of people who voted for our governor, that's where that percentage comes from. So the percentage, or that number, goes up and goes down based upon who voted for the governor.
Right. And so the reality is they're going to disqualify some of the signatures. How many are you really trying to get? 1.2 million, 1.6 million? What are you trying to? Actually,
it's 1.6 million. For round figures, I'm going for 2 million signatures, because some signatures will drop out. You're right about that.
Mm-hmm. And so in doing this, I mean, 2 million signatures out of a 37 or 39 million population state.
Yeah.
You must be just loaded with money, and you're going to go pay people all over the state to collect these signatures, right?
No, I'm not loaded with money. No, we're not going to pay anybody to do that. We've got a real plan in place. We've done this once before in our 2009 campaign, and we gathered almost 600,000 signatures. which at the time we only needed like 650,000 to actually get it on the ballot.
Right.
So we've already proven that it's doable. It's really a matter of organization and teamwork, and we think we've got a winning team this
Okay.
time.
Great. And so, but you are looking potentially at other volunteers and alliances so that if somebody likes what they hear, we'll give them the opportunity to reach out to you later.
I'm doing that constantly, building new alliances, building teams. We've got a wonderful set of co-sponsors already in place, so the team is looking pretty good.
Okay. So that's how we get the ballot measure on the ballot.
Yes, sir.
But so tell me a little bit about this initiative you have and why you're so passionate about getting it on the ballot in the first place.
Well, as you all know, this year represents the 40th year since Roe v. Wade. In the last 40 years, there hasn't been one pro-life strategy that Black Americans can embrace or wrap their arms around. And as you know, Black Americans are the #1 customer to the abortion industry. No one has more abortions than we do. And so Personhood, which is what I'll be putting on the ballot, is a particular pro-life strategy, does not embrace exceptions, and it's the kind of strategy that communities of color can embrace.
Okay. And so tell me about that and why personhood is the way to go about that within, as you said, communities of color.
In our community, all of us understand what it's like not to be a person. And so personhood resonates in my community. Also, personhood essentially seeks to define the term person and just simply make the term clear. So we've got our definition in place. It includes everybody from the womb to the tomb. We think everybody ought to be a person, whether you're a child in utero, or you're a senior citizen facing end-of-life decisions, or you're a disabled war veteran. We think you need to be treated as a person, protected by love and by law.
Okay. And so as you go out and you talk to people about this idea of defining really when is it that someone should be considered a person, and really do we all have equal value just by the fact that we are a living being?
Yes.
How has this message been received? Because I know in some circles it may be considered very controversial because it flies in the face sometimes of what people want to kind of rationalize in their mind as when does life begin. So how is the reception?
The reception is better than what you might think. When we're actually out there in the public square gathering signatures, people will say, well, gee, I thought that's what they meant by that. Isn't that already true? And that gives us an opportunity to say, well, no, it's not already true. No, the child inside the womb isn't considered a person. The child inside the womb is not protected by law. It gives us a chance to talk about senior citizen, end-of-life decisions. It gives us a chance to actually have the conversation we want to have, which is exactly what our goal is, to have those type of conversations.
And so win or lose, this gives you the opportunity to bring the discussion up and have...
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've been invited to talk on this subject from a lot of different organizations, from a church to a Rotary Club, to political organizations. We get a chance to talk about this, and it actually forces us to think about the issue.
Okay. And so are there highlights, particularly around the verbiage, that you think it might be important for us to realize as people are seeing this, and what the real ramifications are, and where you see potential pitfalls or areas where you can really excel in getting the message out?
Well, our language is just wonderful. It makes it clear, first of all, that the term person, as it is applied to human beings, is what we're talking about. So we're not talking about corporate personhood. We're not talking about anything like that. We're talking about the term person as it applies to human beings. We also make it clear that it starts from the beginning of our biological beginning. So we're introducing a whole new term here, our biological beginning. And then it applies regardless of race, color,
handicap,
gender. It just doesn't matter. It clearly applies to all of us. Sort of has a civil rights swing to it when you actually read the language. So it's a definition that we all can agree on, really, literally at face value.
Okay. And so, what are you looking for as far as support right now? I've had the opportunity very recently sitting with you as you were talking to potential alliance partners. What would be the ideal partner for you that wants to get involved in the movement?
Well, the ideal partner would be someone that brings, $100 million to the table. That would be the ideal.
Hold on, I'll write you a check. Won't be worth anything, but
that would be great. But we're looking for people who share the same passion. That'll be willing to take a petition and gather 10 signatures and then literally turn it back in. We're looking for those that would like to maybe manage a county, be responsible for receiving the petitions and then distributing the petition to those that will actually gather the signatures. Mm-hmm. The process isn't really difficult. You simply gather the signatures in the public square. We will turn them back in. We'll scrub them to do the best we can and make sure that they are valid signatures.
Right.
And then at the appointed time, turn them in.
Right. And so if somebody's church wants to be involved, if they're part of a political group or a club, or they're just a concerned citizen, mm-hmm. they might consider getting involved.
This is an easy thing to get involved in. They can come to our website. They can get more information about, the California Equal Rights Amendment. In the past, I've run it as the California Human Rights Amendment, but this time, this particular campaign, I've changed the name, and it's literally called the California Equal Rights Amendment. If you want to get involved in that, just contact me and we can take it from there.
But even what's interesting is even people who might be opposed to your definition, I think it would make sense for them to get involved. Because what it does is, to your previous point, it raises the conversation point and gives both sides the chance to display their definitions, compare them, and see what the public really thinks on a very philosophical and unsolved challenge for us as a statewide community and potentially national community, which I'm sure is the eventual.
Well,
it's run in other parts of the country. There are mm-hmm. there are areas that there have been some support kind of manifested. Can you tell us a little bit about how the initiatives have worked in other parts of the country, or senatorial or U.S. House members, or even at the state level, the kind of reception that you've seen?
Well, I've been very encouraged. There have been several states that have picked this up and tried to actually get this done in their states. Most recently was North Dakota. North Dakota literally got something passed in their state. I'm very excited about what's happening in North Dakota. So we're waiting to see what the final results are, but it's at the point now where a decision is going to have to be made. And so the grassroots efforts have come together and they've put together the package. Mm-hmm. Federally speaking, there's a lot of opportunity federally speaking. And so I'm in conversations now with the House and with the Senate on what we can do, because obviously the end game of the pro-life movement is that everybody is legally protected by love and by law. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And so, are there particular pieces of legislation or other types of names around the legislation that people should look for?
Well, one, they should look for in terms of the Senate, S91, Senator Rand Paul. He's co-sponsoring a human life amendment. I've recently been in discussions with the senator. He and I have sat down personally and talked about how we can work together with this. And so there are other efforts even within the House where a human life amendment has been proposed. And so I'm going to have a list put together of where you can connect and who you can connect with to get involved in the state that you live in.
Okay. Great. And at this point, it seems like a natural point to just take a quick break and to have a word from our underwriter, the Conservative Forum.
say I'm a constitutional law attorney. And they say, oh really, what kind of constitutional law attorney? I say, well, I'm the true kind, the kind that believe that the Constitution is what the Constitution says and what it was intended to say. Anything beyond that is tyranny and should not be allowed.
So it's come to this, my friends. You ready for the second American Revolution against a ruling class that simply lectures but does not listen or defend the American people? It is government versus the people. Am I right? Yes. Look at the Electoral College example, right? A leftist popular challenge to states' rights. You think the founders weren't brilliant people? Did they not know what they were doing by carefully calibrating to get the small states and the big states to come together? Why does Wyoming get 2 senators in California? Actually, I'd rather have Wyoming's 2 senators.
And welcome back to the right side. That was a word from our underwriter, the Conservative Forum. In addition to sponsoring the show, which we're extremely grateful for, they're best known for their speaker series. For example, this evening, Ying Ma, author of Chinese Girl in the Ghetto, will be speaking at 432 Steerland Road, just a few moments from here in Mountain View. And the program normally starts at 7 o'clock. In July, Debbie Bacigalupi, a former congressional candidate as well as a former guest on this show, will be speaking. And then in August, Steve Forbes and his co-author of the Freedom Manifesto will be speaking at the forum. You can find out more at theconservativeforum.com, but at this point I want to return to our interview with our guest, Walter Hoye. Walter, thanks again for joining us. Wanted to just chat with you a little bit about how important this movement is, this pro-life movement, in the context of something that's been very recently in the news, the Kermit Gosnell trial, and whether or not you believe that this is something that is unique to just this man, or generally the feeling toward late-term abortion specifically, and some of the monstrosities that we've heard out of him. Now, as a little bit of background, many people, because the media hasn't covered it, aren't familiar with this trial, so give us a little bit of background.
Well, Chris, this is a great issue. Real quickly, Dr. Kermit Gosnell was an abortionist in Philadelphia. He provided late-term abortions to women literally in the community, in Philadelphia's community. He was recently convicted of first-degree murder, and he has waived his right to appeal, and so he's going straight to jail. During that trial, it became very clear what abortion is and what abortion does. You got a chance to see severed feet of children in glass jars and baby parts being housed in refrigerator freezers. It was a very graphic scene, and it became very, very clear to everybody what actually happens during an abortion procedure. Well, the ramifications of this trial and this guilty verdict is just enormous. We've had clinics shut down because there's a demand for inspections now. People want to inspect the clinic, make sure the clinics are clean, make sure the I's are being dotted, the T's are being crossed, so that the best medical care is being provided for women, and which in this case it was not.
Right.
So in light of the Kermit Gosnell guilty verdict, you can look forward to a real big push from the pro-life movement to make sure that women get the type of high-quality care that they deserve. And so there'll be a lot coming as a result of this.
And to your point about the inspections, some of the parallels were made about, for example, in the Bay Area, we see the food, the health department stickers on the front window. And actually, if somebody wants to go to a nail salon or a hair salon, they have to be inspected periodically. In Philadelphia, there was no inspection happening. Blood-stained floors.
Absolutely.
things that were nowhere near sanitary. And so one of the arguments that the choice side would make is that if abortion were to be made illegal or to be made more difficult to get, you would have scenarios exactly like what was happening in places like Philadelphia where it's legal.
Right.
And these are situations where this gentleman was going beyond late term, in fact, children being born and then clipping spinal cords
and all of that, yeah.
and breaking necks, etc. So, but he's just one individual, right? No, this doesn't happen in other places.
No, that's what we need to really get that out there. He's not an exception. He's not the lone exception. We've got a doctor in Texas that we're taking a look at that's in the news. You know, my goodness, is actually in the news. And so this is not something that's isolated to Philadelphia, the Kermit Gosnell. This is happening all around the country, and it's forcing America as a country to really take a look at what abortion is and what abortion does.
And other instances in Chicago that you're very close to.
Very close to. There are some instances in Chicago with the Tanya Reeves case where she was in a Planned Parenthood abortion clinic where all the modern facilities, all the doctors were there, and the abortion was botched so bad that not only did Tanya bleed for over 5.5 hours, but even a level 1 trauma center, once she got there, could not save her life. And so Kermit Gosnell is not an isolated case. Neither is the doctor in Texas. Neither is Tanya Reeves. She's not the first woman to actually die on an abortion table. We need to bring this to the light, put this in the public square.
And this goes back to the issue of valuing life from the very beginning.
Oh, yes, yes. You've got to get to the point where all life is important, all life is valuable.
Okay, great. And so what other things should we be watching out for as we're going through life? I mean, we are kind of, in some ways, sheltered from the realities of these types of what I would consider to be atrocities. Are there other initiatives or other movements that we should be aware of that might not be getting the publicity for obvious reasons? I mean, places like Planned Parenthood will distort the services that they actually provide and allow that to be propagated at a national level. Anything else we should be aware of?
Well, you need to keep your eye out on the educational campaigns that are going to be coming forth on this. There'll be billboard campaigns that will help us understand what's really going on in the abortion industry. We're going to actually see educational campaigns that really make public what the statistics are that are coming right out of the the Planned Parenthood side of the fence. So we'll be using their data. This is the data that they're willing to admit to. So you can see the actual impact of abortion, not only on America, nationwide, but the impact in the Black community, the impact in the Hispanic community, which represent the #1 and the #2 customers of the abortion industry.
Are there any of those statistics that you can share? We've shared them on the show before, but it's been a while. Do you have any updated numbers for us?
Sure. I mean, according to the Alan Guttmacher Institute, which is the not-so-former research arm of Planned Parenthood, 30% of all abortions in the United States of America come from Black Americans.
And they only represent, if you look at childbearing age, 2-3%?
We're getting down to 3%. Initially, altogether, we're about 14% of the population, the United States population. But when you consider half of us are women, you've cut that down now to about 6%. And then when you look at childbearing age from 15 to 44, now we're talking about 3% responsible for 30% of all abortions in the country. But wait a minute, if you take a look at the CDC report, the government's report, which doesn't even include all the states that can report in, which includes California, the leading abortion provider in the entire country. The CDC is telling us that the number is not 30%, it's 35%. So again, we're looking at 30 to 35% of all abortions taking place in just one community.
Right.
And when I get to the Hispanic community, we're looking at 20+% of that. So we're looking at maybe over 50% of all abortions come from just 2 communities.
Well, which would stand pretty strong with Margaret Sanger's original idea behind Planned Parenthood in the first place, which was to eradicate black and minority races generally.
I think it's a smoking gun, and when you combine the fact that we're looking at about 70 to 75% of the clinics, surgical abortion clinics, Planned Parenthood surgical abortion clinics, located in minority areas, Hispanic communities, black communities, it's becoming pretty obvious what the agenda is.
Okay. And so any idea about the current numbers overall for Planned Parenthood's women's health services over the course of a year?
My goodness. When you take a look at Planned Parenthood receiving over, half $1 billion taxpayer dollars for services that they're claiming to receive, the numbers are actually coming out, and we're learning the truth about it, that their abortion represents a much larger percentage of their budget than what they're willing to admit to.
Right. And a number, do you have a number for
I don't have a number off the top of my head.
I remembered it being hundreds or even 1,000 babies a day.
At least that.
And it's saddening because people think it's a lot less common to receive these services than it really is. But how do people find out more if they want to follow what you're doing with the Personhood initiative and just to get in contact with you directly?
Well, go to our website, www.civilrights.foundation, civilrights.org, and you can contact me through that website. I'm literally Walter at civilrights.org.
Okay. Perfect. Well, Walter, thank you very much for joining us this evening. And thank you for joining us this evening. If the Personhood initiative is important to you, please track Walter down, let him know how you might be interested in supporting, or just get more information. On that note, we thank you for joining us this evening on The Right Side. I've been your host, Chris Pareja, and we'll look forward to seeing you again in person or on the show sometime soon. Have a great night.